Well, on the show tonight, we're asking you to share with us, so what is on your Sona 2025 wish list? To share your views via WhatsApp on 072-110-5584 or give us a call on 010-594-6010. We hear now from some stakeholders in the various sectors. We're joined by Watercan Executive Manager Dr. Cyril Ramaphosa, the South African Medical Association's chairperson, Dr. Mvuyisi Mzogwa, Ndifunungwazi is head of political organizing, Buhle Boy, as well as the University of Johannesburg economics professor, Professor Daniel Meyer. Guys, a good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. There really is a lot to talk about, and perhaps, Dr. Mzogwa, we start with you, because we did, of course, get the latest from the Department of Health as well today, I think giving us a sense of what we can expect from the president tomorrow where health is concerned. But my goodness, when the president does touch on the intentions that we set for health in 2025, he's got a lot to tackle, right? PEPFAR, of course, and Trump being top of mind. And one wonders really just the tone and sort of direction that he needs to take. But let's start there. The key top three things that you think the president really needs to get right for that sector tomorrow.
Good evening to you, Naledi, and your viewers and fellow panelists. Thank you so much for inviting us to your beautiful show. The healthcare system, as you have alluded to earlier on, is at its breaking point. Judging from what is happening, some of the things that you have mentioned, we've had the USAID pull out in the country. But also we've got all these domestic issues, like our doctors, 1,800 of them are not unemployed after finishing community service. We hope that really the president is going to show leadership in this regard and give some hope and direction to South Africans to say that now that we're going through this year and also we're going to be having this announcement on budget, what are the issues, tangible things that are going to be changed for the health of the nation in terms of the infrastructure development, the maintenance of hospitals, but also making sure that human resources for health are not neglected. We make sure that those that are trained to take care of patients are given a platform to practice their own careers. And also the fact that we are facing a serious challenge of shortages of medicines in the hospitals, in the clinics, and everything else that we've been talking about. We just hope that the president is really going to give hope to every South African regarding how he is going to change the status quo. Otherwise, this is dangerous to the public, to have shortages of staff, because it puts pressure on the existing healthcare professionals. They end up getting burnout, getting into depression, some at times committing suicide. But also the issue of litigation. We then have problems of litigation because of these escalating problems that we have in the healthcare sector.
Yeah, and I think, Buhle, a great opportunity for us to bring you in here. And Ndifunungwazi, obviously, a very outspoken organization where access to housing for the most vulnerable is really central to you. And what a time for really you to start making some of your own sort of requests for your Sona wish list, when the debate, one would say that at some point it was a national debate, but now it's grown more international with Donald Trump entering the fray there around the Expropriation Act, right? And so there's of course the question on whether or not the president then has to strike a balancing act. There's the work that's being done to clarify what the act does. But there certainly is going to be, I suppose, an expectation that the president will talk about the enactment of that act and access to land for the vulnerable. What is it that you think he should be able to say tomorrow?
No, thank you very much, Naledi, for inviting us to the show, and greetings to the viewers at home. We think as Ndifunungwazi that this is a very important family meeting where the president must set out the direction for the country and the policy objectives, at least for the next 12 months. And very important is this question, the debate around expropriation. We think that it's very important that the president of the country takes a very firm stance about the implementation of the policy and the act. And probably we want to hear the president telling us more about how does he plan to rein in the other partners in the GNU in terms of the implementation of the part, because we've heard Ministers Dean McPherson saying that he will not be participating in the implementation of the Expropriation Act. And we find that to be quite very concerning. And we think that the president must put the country into confidence about how does he plan to reconcile these ideological differences with his partners in the government of national unity. We think that equally he must take a very firm stance against the president of the United States to make it known that this country is a sovereign state and it must implement its laws. By the way, the debate about expropriation is not a new conversation at all. It was a conversation even about the RDP, which planned to, reform 30% of agricultural land. So there's nothing new in the debate. What faces everyone is this nil compensation debate that is being brought about, and this expropriation act is aligning the constitution. Is aligning the expropriation act of 1957 into to the 1996 constitution, and that's all that it is that the act is doing. And we think that the act must be implemented to make sure that the imbalances of the past are addressed. And this is an opportunity to reconcile South Africa using the land as a tool and an instrument to make sure that people access land on an equitable basis in this country, because we have a violent history that is characterized by displacement, that is characterized by violent evictions. And we're saying that the government of the country must tell us about the plan to address the housing crisis using land, because over 3.4 million people are waiting for housing in this country. And this is an opportunity to address that particular question. And equally, we have a violent situation where majority of people were displaced into the peripheries. And we're saying that the government of the day must speak to the urban land question, because it has been absent in the debates that we're having in terms of how does government plan to redress spatial injustice through the urban land question. And we're saying that social housing must be used to address the imbalances of the past, to make sure that the previously marginalized are brought closer to the city through paying minimum rentals in these spaces that they were marginalized and displaced from.
Yeah, I hear you say a lot there, Bushle. We need the plan, right? And it certainly is one thing to have the vision of what we want to achieve, and that's a lot of the time what we might get from the State of the Nation address. But Dr. Adam, I want to bring you in here because, and obviously Professor Meyer, from an economic point of view, listening to all of this and going to collate, I suppose, from an economic point of view, what the president needs to get right. But Dr. Adam, I come to you and I say, okay, well, we've heard the president tell cabinet that water is, certainly going to be on the top of his to-do right list in this year. No surprises there. But the reality is we can certainly have the vision of giving water availability to all the most vulnerable, especially. But there is the situation around the plan that needs to be in place to deal with the infrastructure backlog and crisis that we see playing out in a lot of our areas, particularly urban areas. What can the president say about water availability that says it can give some optimism to communities that are struggling with water availability?
Good evening, Naledi, and to all your viewers and to the fellow panelists. I think that you've touched on it, and what is important is that if we look at, it's not just about access, it's also about water quality. And it's about the fact that many of our rivers are polluted, and we need the president to start treating water with that kind of urgency. It shouldn't only be on the agenda when there are outages and people on the street. So I like the idea that it's going to be on the top of the agenda. But what we want clear indication from the president is a few things. One is we need to make sure that the budget for water and sanitation is ring-fenced, because without that, we're going to be in this mess, or even it's going to get even worse. We know that we need a focus on our leadership. in terms of, if we just look at our water boards, some of them have not been getting the kind of the funds from the municipalities. Municipalities are not paying them. So we're actually having our water boards that may actually have to close down. And that is a problem because, that then affects our water supply as a whole. The other thing that's very important and links very closely to health and links to land is the issue of access to water. The fact that still only 46% of the country actually have a tap in their home needs attention. The fact that 3,500 schools still have pit latrines, 3,500 pit latrines are still being used in schools when we know children are dying with that needs a focus. So when we look at water and sanitation and the lack of access in the country, I think we need to be able to say that at this day and age, we still got about 10% of our population dependent on pollutant rivers. That's just unacceptable. The third thing I think, which is also very important, is we need to be honest and we need to tackle the corruption and the mismanagement that exists within the water sector. Where you have young people, 23-year-olds, getting water tanker tenders of 263 million, needs an investigation, and the president must be able to put into place the leadership that this kind of corruption and mismanagement doesn't continue. One more, sorry, Naledi, is we need to see the Department of Water and Sanitation has been doing well to hold municipalities accountable and have taken many municipalities to court. In fact, they're waiting for their court date. What we need to see is mayors, city managers, municipal managers being held accountable. If they're polluting our rivers, if they're not dealing with our wastewater treatment works, they should be fired, charged, or arrested. And until we do that, we are not putting the kind of urgency we need on our water.
I must tell you, my mind is almost stuck on one of those stats that you shared there, Dr. Adam. 10% of our population is dependent on polluted rivers. Never heard that before, and it's frightening. We've got Gaba on the line in Mthatha as we take a quick call. Gaba, good evening. Thanks for calling in. Gaba, good evening. Okay, we'll take more calls, 0105946010. Gaba's not on the line at the moment. Professor Meyer, let's bring you in here. You've heard quite a bit from our other panelists already. And what's interesting is just today, in fact, you had the Democratic Alliance, another party within this government of national unity sharing, what they want to hear come out of this government as we get into that State of the Nation address. But they talk about how, they are delivering, but the GNU must, do more faster. And talking about, and I actually want to read this. Unless the GNU urgently implements policies that drive economic growth and enable job creation, South Africa will fail. Now, from the DA, Prof. Meyer, you'll hear a lot of the times that with the GNU in place and DA a part of it, you've got a great opportunity for economic growth and more confidence in our economy. I wonder if that sort of optimism is felt by yourself as someone who looks at the economy from your perspective and the importance of that speech tomorrow in building on that confidence.
Good evening, colleagues. Yes, I agree with what's been said previously by all of the panelists. Tomorrow night is a very important speech by the current president, and we need some urgency. We cannot just say, no, we're going to call task teams, we're going to call some committees to do things. We now need to start implementation on everything that we've got. We've got very good policies, but we're not implementing. And in terms of the economic, let's say the economic trend and economic vibe, there is a positive outlook with the new government, the GNU. There is a positive outlook, but we need to see some action. And I think in the past, Sona's, the president used a lot of promises for jobs, promises to sort out the SOEs, promises to fix red tape, promises to fix corruption, promises to provide infrastructure. And then he also sometimes came up with these weird ideas of smart cities and bullet trains, while we don't have basic services to many people in South Africa. So we need to be realistic and very urgent. So in terms of economics, I don't think we have got a clear-cut economic plan. And that is what's blocking us at this point of time. We had 300 days without load shedding, and hopefully it's going to continue now after the weekend. But we need a clear plan. We need economic growth, but we need inclusive growth to include everybody to participate. We cannot continue to have this huge unemployment of more than 50% in terms of the expanded definition. That will put us under pressure in the future because people will not take it for much longer. The youth are very frustrated. People are getting more and more frustrated. And we need real action. And it will start with a clear economic plan and policy certainty. We have got huge levels of policy uncertainty, and that includes the land, the agricultural sector, the health sector, and that blocks investment. Policy uncertainty is like cancer for the economy. You will not find international investors investing in a country where there's so much uncertainty. So we need more certainty what's going to happen into the future.
Let me ask you this, Prof. Mayor, because I want to stay with you a little bit. One of the things that we touched on with Buhle as well as Dr. Mzugwa is, I suppose the impact a little bit of what you're getting from the international community and how they're starting to view the country, specifically under a Trump administration, the debate around expropriation, the debate around the aid that we receive for healthcare. And then there's the fact that geopolitically, my goodness, we've been very outspoken as a country over previous years, over situations like Gaza, for instance. If you think those have economic implications that, start to really touch on all of these sectors because they talk about the resources that we're able to generate as a country.
Definitely, in my opinion, that the geopolitical situation that we're currently in has an impact on the economy. We've been too outspoken. We've not been too neutral enough to be on both sides of the game. And if you want to grow economically and if you want to have good trade partners, you need to be friends with everybody that's important in the global economy. For example, China, they are our biggest trade partner, but we've got a huge trade deficit with them. We're importing much more than we're exporting to them. With the US, we've got a positive trade relationship. So we're exporting much more to them than we're importing from them. So if we lose, for example, AGOA through this non-neutrality that we've got, we will lose a lot. We will lose a lot of our growth. We lose our jobs. The motor industry is going to be hugely affected if something happens with our AGOA trade agreement. So the geopolitical world does affect the economy, and how well we govern also affects the economy. And good governance is, we are going down the list in terms of global rankings for good governance. So we are really in need for very good, effective governance at this point of time.
Yeah, we're going to take a short break. And then when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more to our panel. This is, of course, ahead of the State of the Nation address that will be delivered tomorrow by the President. But this evening, we talk economics, we talk land and human settlements, we talk water as well as health. Those themes to be brought up as well in that speech tomorrow. And let's take a look at a few WhatsApps that have come in from our viewers. Then, of course, you can send yours through. We'll give you that number in a moment. But Mulemo Wame says, my wish is most villages in the northwest, the President could at least address the issue of the drainage system. Our kids are still using pit toilets while our very own government promised to eradicate the issue of unemployment. It is now 20 years since I graduated in labor relations diploma with Vaal University of Technology. Still today, I am unemployed. Mulema Wame, thank you so much for that. Z says, I wish to see more being done in terms of infrastructure for schools, more job creation and improvement rather in basic education. So there's alignment with higher learning education. More must be done to address crime, violent crime in particular, reduction in national debt and working towards sustaining ourselves as a country. Serious attention to the water crisis in South Africa. Z, thank you so much for that. Cyril in Beacon Bay saying, I wish they could take the SAPS seriously, pay them. Must not make SAPS members jokes. Promote those who have been in the same rank for more than 14 years. Okay. And Malisela says the President should address the issue of service delivery in rural areas and the high level of killings in the country, the high level of corruption in the country. Moreover, in the government departments. Keep those WhatsApps coming in. The number is 072-110-5584. You're more than welcome to give us a call as well. 010-594-6010. We'll continue with our panel as we get closer to the State of the Nation address tomorrow evening. Stay with us. We're back in a moment. Welcome back to Newsfeed PM, the late edition. We continue hearing the various wish lists for the State of the Nation address that will be delivered by the President tomorrow night. And we're still in conversation with Dr. Mvuyisi Zukwa-Buhle-Boy, Dr. Ferial Adam, and Professor Daniel Meyer. Let's go around again. And Dr. Mzukwa, I want to bring you in here. You know, last year, during the State of the Nation address, you had the President actually talk about in 2024, a phased implementation of the National Health Insurance. And I see you smiling there because we're going to hear NHI again. No surprises. I don't think anyone is shocked that you're going to hear about NHI. But implementation is a while away. And talk to me about just the likelihood that we're going to see, you know, us get closer to implementation, particularly where you've got GNU partners that need to agree on the modalities, right?
Yes, Naledi, this is a very crucial point that you are raising. As you know, Sama has been vocal in terms of stating the fact that NHI is unimplementable at this point in time and unaffordable, unfortunately, for the country. But as you know, the government at this point in time has not, the partners have not agreed as yet. But the problem is that there are so many uncertainties and many things that needs to be done. For example, it's a very centralized approach, but also it's a forward-looking plan, which is we don't have a problem with that. But the issue is now we don't have staff at the moment. Dire shortages now. What do we do in the at this point? Because for more than 20 years there has not been any reform in the healthcare sector. And, you know, we've been debating the issue of the NHI and all these things and, you know, promising all these things. But now what is happening is that, you know, there are many legislative steps and many things that have to happen. In the meantime, you know, the healthcare system is in a crisis. You know, it has collapsed. It has fallen on its face, you know, because in KZN and in other parts of the country, you have patients that are turned away, cancer patients. They do not have stock for chemotherapy. And what you must think what happens to those patients. But the other thing is, you know, like in the status quo, the NHI doesn't tell us how is it going to stop the issue of corruption, because that's the greatest threat that we have in the healthcare sector. Let me tell you, between 2009 and 2013, we lost 24 billion rands to corruption. And you recall that during COVID-19, we also have about 14-point-something billion that is still being investigated. So you can imagine going into this, you know, pulling this whole amount of money, and you don't have, you know, instruments in place to make sure that you guard against corruption. So we are saying to government, you know, whilst you're preparing for whatever you're preparing for, but do attend to the needs on the ground as we speak. You know, do invest on infrastructure, do invest on healthcare, human resources for health, so that the system continues. And the issue of budgeting as well. How long are we going to depend on the United States for this US aid? We should by now, you know, be talking about the fact that we are prepared for any eventuality. We can't be dependent on other states, you know, for our responsibilities.
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about the dependency, because what we've heard a lot from government lately with this debate with Trump has been, you know, that really the contribution from the US makes up only 17% of what we spend on health, but still you do have all of these deficiencies. I want to move on because I think your point is made, though, Dr. Mzukwa. But you raised the issue of corruption. And I think that regardless of what sector we're getting into, that is the hole at the bottom of the bucket, you know, that the country faces when we talk about challenging some of the issues that we have. In the world of water, for instance, Dr. Adam, more and more over the past few years, we're talking about a water tank mafia. And here's the thing about why that issue is so important is because you've got almost syndicates that capitalize on the lack of water availability, which is a concern because, you know, for many communities, it may feel like that is why water availability simply isn't going to be prioritized or implemented in some areas. I mean, is there something the president can say that speaks to how they clamp down on those opportunistic groups?
I think that would be an important start. I mean, I think that we've been talking about the water tanker mafia for more than, you know, just a few years now. It's something that, and I think that if government does not actually do something now to say that this is how we're going to deal with it, that it's going to actually get worse, and then it's going to be uncontrollable. And the reason that the water tanker kind of, I would say, industry or the mafia have been able to get as strong as it is right now is because of the mismanagement at municipal level, is because of the corruption at municipal and national level. So I think that you know, in itself is saying that the poor leadership, that needs to be stamped out. And that is something that the president needs to focus on. So it's all linked. It's linked to corruption, it's linked to poor leadership, and it's linked to the state of our municipalities across the country. So I think that when the president comes out, it mustn't be a wish list and it mustn't be empty promises, because the reality is that, you know, we can't look at the water sector in isolation. It's linked to everything. And the more that we actually understand that, we will understand that the crisis we're in right now. The fact that 46% of clinics don't have good, clean running water, and 25% of our schools don't have good cleaning running. The fact that we're telling children to bring water on their checklist for stationery is unacceptable. And the president needs to be stronger about that. And in terms of the water tanker mafia, we need to look at how these tenders are being done. We need to have better civil society oversight, and that needs to create the kind of transparency we need, which is lacking across the board when it comes to these tenders of huge amounts of money.
Yeah, you know, just to, of course, these are all your final thoughts, and Buhle, I'm gonna give you your last bite here as well. Where land is concerned, there's so much to talk about because you've touched on, you know, the need for transformation in urban spaces, right, and bringing some access to vulnerable groups. But I'm also quite concerned about what we do in some of the rural areas. You've got some opposition party, no, in fact, not opposition anymore, right? A party like the Democratic Alliance that has, over the years, talked emphatically about how, well, we can talk about land reform all we want, but quite often when you get into some of the rural spaces, the claimants will take, you know, money over land, or then there's the skills shortage that's necessary, so that when people do have access to land, they're able to use that land, and, you know, and understanding that there's so much arable land. We talk about the investment that's necessary and how the president starts to invite that investment to make all of those necessary skills available, so that, you know, the opportunities actually have green shoots.
Thank you very much, Naledi. I think it's important to say that rural land must be developed. That's a very important thing, because rural communities, remote communities have been far neglected in terms of development. I mean, that's why today we see urbanization, a lot of people moving to the cities, and that's because of underdevelopment. And we think that the government of the day must know that urbanization is a reality, and it must be planned for. And I think I wanted to raise an issue around the statistics that were being raised around unemployment, in terms of the expanded unemployment, that 42% of the country's population is unemployed, and 68% of youth unemployment is scary. But I think important thing to say is that all these figures have color, because 47% of people that are unemployed in this country are Black people. And those have color. The majority of people that are finding themselves in these circumstances are Black people in this country. And that's why I was saying that land plays a very pivotal role in terms of dealing with this question of inequality that we have in this city. And studies at Harvard have told us that to deal with these issues, we must deal with the question of spatial justice. And the president in the last Sona said that we're dealing with this question in trying to make sure that public land is unlocked to bring people closer to better schools. And we don't see any action that is being done by the president to that effect. But more worryingly, is the lack of growth in our economy. The economy of this country is growing at 0.8%. And other developing countries are growing at 4%. And that's a crisis. That's a crisis that can only be dealt with resolving this question of the land in this country, and make sure that a lot of people get to participate in the economic activities of this country. And that's through the transformation and spatial advancement of spatial transformation in this country, making sure people live closer to job opportunities so that more people can participate in the economic activities and boost the economic fortunes of this country. And that's what must happen. And urbanization is the that we must deal with. And we think that the state must deal closely with this question of land through policy. And we're happy that government has adopted the white paper on human settlements. And we're saying that that white paper must be adopted in the context of the Housing Code and the Housing Act to make sure that we deal with this crisis of housing. And last year, the president dealt with this question of the housing crisis in saying that more people today in the country have access to brick and mortar housing. And that's a lie. It's false. Because in 1994, we had about 300 informal settlements in this country. Today, we have more than 4,000 people living in informal settlements. There's no such a thing as this statement that the president has made last year. And I think this year, as a country, must pay close attention and hold the government and the president accountable in terms of their articulations and spreading false information in the country. The government must be held accountable in terms of the delivery, because housing delivery in this country has been on the decline, and we need to make sure that more people have access to housing.
Yeah, that's a big growth in informal settlements over 30 years. Buhle, let's take some calls. Smuts is in Adelaide in the Eastern Cape. Smuts, good evening. Thanks for calling.
Hello.
Hi, Smuts. Talk to us. Good evening.
Good evening, how are you?
I'm well, sir. Talk to us. What are your thoughts or your wish list for the president for tomorrow?
You know, I'm thinking my president to frustrate the issue of skills development in Adelaide, which I hope will be preceded by fast-tracking the Adelaide Foxwood Dam. We have been in dire shortage of water for quite a number of years. The Foxwood Dam has been a hope for us in Adelaide for more than 40 years or 50 years now. And that is why we are pleading with the president to fast-track the Adelaide Foxwood Dam.
Yeah. No, that is incredibly important. Thank you so much for that. Letlaganolo is calling in from Newcastle. Letlaganolo, good evening.
Good evening, how are you?
I'm well, sir. Talk to us.
Yes, I'm good, thanks. Actually, my question is based to Dr. Cyril Adam. Yes, the organization is pushing out for corruption in the water crisis here in South Africa. So the higher organization also inquire about the infrastructure that is giving out dirty water to the citizens. Have they looked at that also?
Yeah, she did mention at the beginning of the discussion as well that not only is it important to look at water availability, but also the quality of water, and it certainly is something that the president needs to address, especially after we've been watching what's been playing out in Hammanskraal for years on end, where water quality has in fact cost us lives. But Dr. Adam did touch on that a little bit earlier. But thank you so much for joining us. Professor Meyer, let me come back to you. Smuts talks about skills development. Here's the reality for a lot of people that are going to be watching the Sona. Top of mind is going to be job creation. And I don't know how we get that right, because there's a sense that every year there's, quite big promises that are made around, well, this year so many jobs will be created, whether it be through the Youth Employment Service Initiative and other sort of platforms. And I wonder if there's still some optimism when we hear the numbers touted by the president and this is the target that we've set ourselves for this year. Then Stats SA comes with the results and they don't look anywhere near what we've heard from the Cape Town City Hall.
Yes, there's been many promises, but government cannot create any jobs. They can create jobs in government, but I think our government is so large already, we cannot add more to it. The private sector must be creating the jobs, and it's a partnership between government and the private sector to create jobs. We need the economy to grow. We need to have a positive investment environment for people to invest in the country. At the moment, there's an investment strike by the private sector because there's uncertainty. There's uncertainty about many of the sectors in the economy, and it needs to be resolved. But I think a very quick win could be for government if they can release government land for the poor to benefit. Because if the poor has got assets and the government has got vacant land that they can sell off or give away to poor people, that is a quick win, but it's not been done. So I think the whole Sona rests on two things: is economic development and growth with jobs, with investment, as well as good governance. We don't have good governance because there's still corruption. There's still thousands of government officials that's got businesses and doing business with government, which is totally illegal, but it's not been rooted out. We had the Zondo Commission. Nobody has been taken to court or jailed. Or as Feriel says, none of the municipal managers, which is transgressing every day, has been taken on. So local government closest to the people is our biggest problem. 70% of them are either bankrupt or going to bankruptcy because of poor governance, and nothing has been done about it. So if we don't fix the economy with a clear plan, and we don't have good governance, we are going downhill. Unfortunately, that's the facts of life.
Yeah, before I let you guys go, I want to play a little bit of a game, and I'll give you a few seconds to perhaps think about it. And that is, if the president were listening to him right now, when you said what he needs to get right in 3 words. So I'm looking for you guys to give me just 3 words. On the other side of us taking a look at these 4 WhatsApps, perhaps let's take a look at those, right? 072-110-5584 to send yours to us. Let's read some of those that have come in so far. Kailicha resident says, please ask the president to end load reduction in the black townships. Why is he punishing us? This is another form of discrimination. This load reduction is affecting us badly. And remember, of course, this is something that the South African Human Rights Commission is going to be looking into. Thank you, Matala in Musima, saying, Tobela, I wish the president to order all municipalities and government departments to allow online submission of job advertisements. People are unemployed and it's difficult for them to submit applications to far places because they don't have money to travel. Matala, thank you so much for that. What's up? Munzile Konyane says, oh, you've got a list as well. My Sona 2025 wish list. Number 1, nutrition and medical care, water and sanitation, housing and safety as promised in the 2024 February, and creating employment and introducing education and skills rather than academic qualifications. And number 3, end of load shedding. Munzi, thank you so much for that wish list that you've sent us. Sipesihle says, good afternoon. Well, it's good evening, Sipesihle. We are tired of wishing. We want to see change. We're tired of cheap talk as the youth are excluded from participating in the economy when searching for jobs. They want 10 years of experience, even for junior positions. Some of us are even fighting to get our first job. If we try to start businesses, we lack funds and resources. Yeah. A very frustrating situation there. We're going to get our key 3 words from our panelists on the other side of this short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. We continue hearing wish lists for the State of the Nation address that will be delivered tomorrow night. We've got Rorisang on the line who's called in. Rorisang, good evening. Thank you so much for calling in. What is it that you want to hear?
Hello.
Hi, Rorisang. Welcome to Newsfeed PM, the late edition. Talk to us about what you want to hear from Sona tomorrow.
I don't know much about Sona, but I hope it's gonna be a good day for everyone. Because I didn't hear much about the Sona, so I hope it's good.
Okay, is that it, Rorisang?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Thank you so much. Well, then we hope that tomorrow you'll be watching so that you are able to know a little bit more about the Sona, because it certainly also speaks to whether or not South Africans will indeed be watching. Do they watch for this, so what someone called earlier, an important family meeting? But for our panelists, one last bite in that I think this is the tough sort of English test here as well. Dr. Mzuko, your 3 words for the president, 3 beats that he needs to hit, and you got to do it in 3 words for me.
We call upon the president to commit to transparent and accountable management of healthcare system and get us out of the crisis.
All right. Okay. Transparency, accountability, and get us out of the crisis. Got it. Buhle?
No, we're really calling on the president to put the people of South Africa first. We think that's important as we move forward and chart a way forward and navigating this GNU dispensation that we're in. The people of South Africa must be put first in any policy position. They must be the central point. And we call on the president to implement the policies. We can't have beautiful written policies that are not implemented. Implementation is key and very important as we move forward.
Okay, great stuff. A lot of words there. Dr. Adam, your 3?
Thank you. So I think the first thing for me would be the president needs to show leadership and needs to stress good governance for better action. And I want to say that in terms of civil society, we must not forget the power of our voices and the power we have to make a change as well.
Okay. Prof. Mayo?
Thank you. I think clear plans related to inclusive growth, infrastructure provision, and delivery of basic services.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is how you know you've got a panel of experts. When you say words, they give you thoughts instead. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much for it. Professor Daniel Meyer, economics professor at the University of Johannesburg. Dr. Cyril Adam, water expert and executive manager at WaterCan. Buhle Boy, who's the head of political organizing and campaigns at Defunukwazi. And Dr. Mvuyisi Mzukwa, who is the chairperson of the South African Medical Association.